This
To order.
conference will now be recorded.
First thing on the agenda, we'll do the invocation, and that'll be done by Bill Shanahan, our town administrator.
Father God, we just thank you for the opportunity to come before you. We praise you that we're in a country that we can do this. And we have all things going on all over the world. And we get to worship you, we get to thank you. There's nothing better. Bless the people in this meeting, Lord God. Give the counselors wisdom to make the decisions that will bring honor and glory to your name and look after the town. Bless the citizens ahead for spending this time out of the day just to come and be a part of this process. We ask that you do all these things through your son Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, there is no public hearing tonight, and I will now entertain any motions relating to the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, we got chapter 12 on the agenda again tonight, and it's been turned down 3 times, and it was turned down last over a month ago, and I don't know why we're having a vote again. Because we can't just keep bringing it back.
Well, chapter 12 needs to be fixed, and we attempted the first reading of it in September of last year. So it's almost been 1 year that we've been trying to get through the first reading. So, I mean, we keep kicking the can down the road, but it's, we need to do something to get something resolved on it.
Yes, sir, but we do have a chapter 12 already in place that we can go by.
Yeah, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we do not have chapter 12 off the agenda tonight.
I'll second it.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Anybody have anything to say about it?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, the predominant changes in Chapter 12 are modifications to the balance of the chapter, such as changing the fee structure for the sidewalk cafes and some of the parameters behind that permitting process. Also establishing a clear ordinance and process and application permitting for third-party sponsored events to be held in town. So, I mean, the sticking point of why we haven't passed Chapter 12 has always been the Section 1221, which talks about the town's right-of-ways. This provision has been unenforceable for quite some time due to the fact that, we have allowed special favors and special treatment throughout the town, such that there are several properties that are in violation of the current ordinance. So what we've been trying to come up with is a compromise that allows most of those current violations to be in compliance with the ordinance. And I think in February, it was Mr. Kinkin that offered a compromise that allowed most of those properties to become in compliance, that would no longer be considered violations. So that compromise has never been brought for a vote. So I think, this needs to go forward for more reasons than just one clause in the whole chapter. There's much bigger items that need to be addressed, but we need to be able to pass what we started and some of the positions we've taken vis-a-vis events and some of the other provisions for public spaces, and move this forward once and for all and maintain an ordinance on our books that is actually enforceable, such that our code enforcement can take appropriate actions without penalizing some of the historical practices that have been there. And I think that's what this puts forward.
Okay. Mr. Greckwald, do you have anything?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I kind of agree with Paul, and Roberts does not allow you to bring it back. If we'd have brought it back at the next meeting, that would have been okay, but there's been several meetings since the last time we voted on this. And it was voted down. And if I mean, I may be wrong, but based on Roberts, I don't think we can bring it back up. I think there's a waiting period.
Well, let's ask our town attorney.
That's what I was fixing to say.
There's not necessarily a waiting period to renew a matter or reconsider a matter. That's not what you're doing at this moment, is reconsidering. But to renew a matter is allowed by Robert's rules. But it is, and I had this very discussion with another entity last night. You can renew a matter, however, it cannot be in an effort to defeat the democratic process. Obviously, if something is not wanted, voting down, that's the democratic process. But if something comes back before you again under Robert's rules that has significant new information, changes, things that are germane, then that allows, the Robert's rules does allow a motion or a matter to be renewed. But again, it is not to defeat the democratic process. It is because there is something germane, new information, or significant change from what it originally was and voted down.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Well, the other issue, and maybe it's for you to tell us, or maybe even Chief Hoffman, if we allow to stay on the books what is there, it behooves us to bring the town into compliance. And therefore, we have almost 400 homes that are currently in violation of this ordinance. If we continue to ignore that principle, I think there's a bigger liability and risk to the town than to consider something that is a reasonable compromise that allows most of those homes to come into compliance. There's probably something less than 100 that may still show some kind of encroachment on the right of way that may be subject to a permit. But I think leaving it as is with over 400 homes in violation creates a problem for the town in an enforcement space, does it not?
I would be very cautious about giving you legal advice in an open session because it does break the attorney-client privilege. So if the police chief has something he would like to add to that, that would be a little bit more germane, but probably not. So council member, I would suggest if this is a matter that we need to discuss in an executive session at a properly noticed executive session, we could do that. That would be a better forum than discussing it publicly when you're talking about matters of liability for the town.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I have another question for the attorney. What does it take to be significant changes to this?
I can't answer that question for you. That would have to be something that the council would decide if it is germane, new information. That's exactly what Robert's Rules speaks to. If it is something that the entire body would think is just trying to defeat the democratic process, then that is something you would vote upon with your matter, whether you renew it, you allow it to be on the agenda, whether you move forward with a matter or not. I can't tell you what that would be. That would be for you all to decide as the body if this is germane, new information, pertinent, what have you, that changes any opinions you had previously. But I cannot answer that for you. That would be a motion status. That would be for the council to decide as a whole.
Okay. Michael, just to bring you up to date on what happened, we're at the point where we're making motions relating to the agenda.
Okay.
And Mr. Holder brought up a motion to take the chapter 12 off. And it was seconded by Mr. Kinkin that we're having discussion on that right now.
Thank you, Mark.
So if there's anything you'd like to say, you're the only one that hasn't spoken on this so far.
Well, I
myself.
would personally like to say that I think it's time for the town to look at the ordinance as it sits today. And it says 0, nothing in the right of way. And we're in violation of it. And if we're in violation of it, then what's the purpose? So it's time for us to get the ordinance straightened out and move forward and have something that can be enforced.
Okay. And me being the last one to talk about it, like I said, we've worked on this for a long time. We've tried to get everybody included in council. We've taken recommendations from everybody. We took a previous motion that was made to try to eliminate it, to get everybody to go to it, and nobody still is in agreement on it. So, I mean, it's something that we need to be done. So with that, we'll take a vote on it. Mr. Stamey?
So to be clear, we're voting on taking it off the agenda, right?
That's correct. Removing it from the agenda.
Yes.
Mr. Holder?
Yes.
Ms. Keating?
No.
Mr. Cracklaw?
I'd like to say that I don't go to a dermatologist in this area. That's why I'm like this. Anyway, I vote to turn it down. I just think we need to move on.
Okay, Mr. Kinkin?
Jenkins, a yes.
Mr. Drake?
No.
And I'm a no on that too. So it will remain on the agenda for this evening. Next thing is the minutes approval, and this is the minutes.
Mayor, I
Yes.
thought he voted no to take it off.
Did you vote to take it on?
No, I voted to
Leave it.
to turn down the
Okay,
amendment.
Right.
my mistake.
Okay. The next thing is the minutes approval, and these are the minutes approval for August 9th, the regular meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from August 9th, 2022 as presented.
Second.
Okay, any discussion before we vote on that? All right, Mr. Stamey?
Yes.
Holder?
Yes.
Keating?
Yes.
Cracklaw?
Yes.
Kinkin?
Yes.
Drake?
Yes.
And I'm a yes also. So the minutes for that date have been approved. The next thing on the agenda is the public comments. And these are public comments relating to agenda items only. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Larry McKean, 6th Avenue South. I'm going to speak about section 1221. If this has been rewritten, this is awful. I mean, the only change you've made is what you do in the first 3 feet from the roadway. You're going to allow street trees. That's the only change. What the heck is a street tree? Now, the rest of the right-of-way, you're leaving the way it was before. You tried to pass before. You read section D. Now, if you strike that section D, you'll make me happy. Not that you want to make me happy. But if you look at what that says, is from 3 feet to the right-of-way, you got to remove your trees because it says no trees. You go back down Surfside Drive, all those trees are going to be coming down because they're more than 3 feet from the roadway, but still within the right of way because the sidewalk is certainly in the right of way, is it not? So this whole thing just isn't consistent. You know, is that what you want to do? Clear the road between 3 feet from the tree where it's okay to have a street tree, but remove the trees all the way out to the right of way. That's what's in this document. If you want to pass something today, here's my suggestion to deal with the issues that were raised with the rest of this section. Strike D and then deal with that later. Pass it as without D. You'll make 95% of you happy, and then you can kick this can down a little bit more when you can sit down and really think about what you're writing here. I don't think this is what you really want to do. It's going to affect much more than 100 houses. What's in that 3 feet to the edge of the right of way? It affects my house, but it's a trivial matter. But if you wanted to, I have a little wall. I'm going to tell you about it. I have a little wall. It comes up about equal to the telephone pole. So, and it's brick, but it's, one of those things you can unstack. You're going to want me to tear that down and leave a gaping hole there. But in the middle of that little brick enclosure, there's a tree. I guess I got to cut that tree down too. But it's behind the telephone pole. So how is an emergency vehicle going to go around the telephone pole through the right-of-way that isn't wide enough? I mean, it just makes no sense. Let's just have some common sense here. Keep the town pretty the way it is. The street appeal of this town 95% of it is awesome. I ride my bike and see it all the time. Anyways, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
Any other public comments? Yes, sir.
Harry Coleman, 10th Avenue North. It's like deja vu all over again. This comes up just about every 6 years. And then most people on the council realize you're opening a can of worms and it's not worth it. No one can cite anything that has happened in those 10 feet of right-of-way that has to be enforced. Why do you need to be enforcing it? Why are you sticking your nose in a place that doesn't belong? People maintain the right-of-way. They understand that they put something in the right-of-way and utilities need to get in, it will be removed and there's no problem. I don't understand why are you doing this? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. You already voted on this. According to Robert's rules, if you want to change it, something that you already voted on, it has to be at the next meeting by the prevailing vote, someone on the prevailing vote. You've done this 3 or 4 times already, and the council has spoken. They don't want it done. But we're gonna bring it up again. It's like the spoiled child syndrome. I want it, and they're told no. Well, 3 or 4 meetings later, I'm gonna bring it up again. And they're told no. And 3 or 4 meetings later, they bring it up again. It's not the way the council is supposed to be run. This is ridiculous. We have much, much more important things to worry about than if someone puts a flower bed or a tree or something like that in the right of way. Because I tell you what, you do this, I can guarantee whoever voted for this, you have a really good chance of not sitting up there. I'm telling you right now, because I will go around town and I will tell the people who voted for this. Who wanted you to pull up your fence? Thank you.
Are there any other public comments? Okay, moving right along, we'll go into communications. The first thing here is the Myrtle Beach Chamber of Commerce with a presentation by Karen Reardon. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, members of council. Happy to share a short update with you. I was able to come in the spring and give you a little update, but now that the fiscal year is ended, June 30th, I felt it was appropriate to give you an update and talk a little bit about summer and a tiny look forward into the autumn, which is fast approaching. So just to remind everyone, our long-term goal when we rebranded in 2020 was to really position our entire Grand Strand as a year-round destination. So we've really been very, very focused on our shoulder seasons, fall, winter, the holiday season, as well as spring, so that we can have a really, really strong year-round visitation. We're doing this by emphasizing this idea that we have 60 miles of coastline, which is very motivating for people out of the area when they hear that. And of course, it's not just about the beach. They come for our beaches because they're beautiful, but they come because there's so many other things that people can do here that's just downright fun for families. And so that's why we continue to call that Beach Plus. And again, we're really focused on a high value traveler. We want to have people that are going to stay overnight. That's not to say that we don't love our day trippers, folks that come to visit us from Columbia or other parts of the state, but really our focus at Visit Myrtle Beach is all on trying to get people who are actually going to put heads in beds and have that overnight visitation, because that's what's going to drive the economic impact that we're all looking for. So our theme for 2022 for this summer has been Beach with the Best. And we've really been focused on, again, the fact that our beaches are gorgeous. They are the best, and we believe, on the entire East Coast. And again, beyond the beaches, there's so much else that people can do. So it's an invitation to travelers to get to know all the different things that exist on the Grand Strand. We're really trying to promote, again, people moving up and down the Grand Strand. So coming, maybe they're staying here in Surfside, they're having some meals here, but then they drive down to Murrells Inlet because they want to check out the Marsh Wash. Maybe another day after the Marsh Walk, they want to go up to Little River and see what that's all about. So we really want to keep them on the Grand Strand. So again, we can maximize their visit. So that's been our focus. So this is some of the creative that we've been using. We actually created sort of two new folks that are almost like ESPN sportscasters, but they don't talk sports, they talk about the beach. And so we created a little stand for them that's very similar to this. It's a podium with blue draping, and there's a male sportscaster. As you can see, he's in a jacket, but then he has his swim trunks on instead of slacks. And then we have a lovely young woman who is dressed in a beautiful green dress. So we're trying again to be using our beach colors of blue and green, and really just again having fun comments on different families that are coming and beaching here with the best. And so starting to show lots of different things that families are doing at the beach. We continue to try to reach beyond just our area in the state, but a regional, national, and even an international presence. We've actually been doing a little bit more this year since COVID has receded in Canada. And you'll see we're going to actually be ramping up our efforts to do more to attract our Canadian snowboards as we go into the fall and into the winter. That's prime season for us. We miss them. Some of them really haven't come back since 2019, and we want them to come back. But in addition to that, as you can see, there's a long line of great markets along the eastern seaboard, but also as we go further into the Midwest continues to be extremely strong for us. And you can see that we've got a couple of flight markets that have been performing really well, and some of these are new. Chicago and Dallas in particular are both as a result of last year's announcement that Southwest was now bringing travelers in on direct flights from Chicago and Dallas. And those flights are coming in full. And so that's really opened up a whole new territory of new visitors for us that in the past thought it was too far to drive to Surfside Beach. Now they're coming by flight. So we're really, really excited to see us expanding that way, thanks to the Southwest partnership. We continue to really be focused on consistency and making sure that our message is out there year round. We have research that shows if we market and then we go quiet for even a couple of months, they forget about us, and then they start looking to Florida and they look at other markets where they may potentially go. And so we really try to stay on almost all year round as best we can. This summer, again, we've been doing the Beach with the Best campaign. We've also been focused on some new music things. We've had some new initiatives where we're trying to emphasize all the live music, all the bands, all the different venues that have performance. It's way more than just Carolina Opry and Alabama Theater and House of Blues. Actually, if you just think about all the different venues that we have where people can listen to live music, it's actually pretty amazing. So we've been really emphasizing that this summer. And so that's been going well. And then as we go into this last week of August, we are going to be pushing already our fall message. And as you all know, September and October are beautiful here. And so we're talking about that to people outside the area that maybe have never come at this time of year as the summer season. So basically, we're saying it's not fall here. It may be in New England, it may be in the Northeast, but here the weather is still beautiful, the water is warm, it's temperate, and this is a great time for them to come if they didn't get to come this summer. So we're excited to launch that next week. These are some of the things that I just wanted to share with you that we continue to do, working with you. Visit Myrtle Beach, Surfside Beach targeted promotions. So really our emphasis in the last 6 months to a year has been trying to get as much content working with you as we possibly can on Surfside so that we can be pushing that out on the Surfside Beach landing page, but also throughout the Visit Myrtle Beach website. So that takes the form of a lot more editorial, video, putting again every event that you have up and out so we can be amplifying that, doing more blog posts, more social media, e-blasts, as well as a lot of public relations and inclusion in all of our ad campaigns. So again, we've been very busy just really trying to tie it seamlessly together so that there's a lot of content there. And as you know, this is the homepage feature. Right now, for full year 2021, we had over 8.5 million users go to the site. So far, first half of 2022, we're at 6.5 million. So we're on a track to exceed what we did last year in terms of the numbers coming to visit that site. And of course, once they go to the page, then they start popping around all over the site to see different things, where they might want to stay, where they want to go out to eat, activities they want to do, and so forth. So this is what it's looking right now in terms of Visit SurfsideBeach.com site sessions. As you can see, we've got sessions up 30%, 22,102 versus 16,000 last year. Same with the number of users, that has risen as well from 14,000 up to 18,000. So that's an increase of 28%. And page views are also up. So that bright blue line is really showing that we're exceeding what we were doing last year. And last year was a very good year. So again, a lot of interest, a lot of activity on the site, and a lot of these do pay off as people then deciding, yes, I am coming, and then they take the next steps to plan their trip. This is the fall travel forecast. I have not shown this out publicly before. You're the first to see it, but we're extremely excited about this. TripAdvisor last week did a national announcement listing the top 10 places for people to travel in the fall. And Myrtle Beach, or I should say really the Grand Strand, was number 8. We have never been in the top 10 for the season of fall. We've been in the top 10 for summer before, but never for the fall. So we are extremely excited about this. We are on a list with Orlando and Miami, Honolulu, Hawaii, Las Vegas, Nevada. That's not usually the cities that we compete with. So we're excited that people are really discovering what we have to offer. And again, that means they're searching right now and are planning vacations. Right now, the 60-day vacation rental occupancy, as you can see, it's the solid blue line that is approaching 80% occupancy. And as we go into September here, so right now we're at 822, 823 today. As we go along, you'll see that the forecast is almost identical to the forecast that we had in 2021 for the fall. Last year's fall visitation was the best on record in the history of tourism. So the fact that we are keeping that momentum in 2022 is pretty remarkable. We don't have a lot of reasons why, I'll be honest. We're all hearing about headwinds coming and recession and people tightening their belts a little bit, but it's not hitting yet for the Grand Strand. At this point, people are still feeling they deserve that vacation. They've planned it, they've booked it, and they are coming. So we should have at least 60 more days of very, very strong tourism visitation here in the Grand Strand, which is, again, very exciting and a bit surprising, but we're very happy about that. Right now, this is the estimated annual value of the marketing that we are doing. You've seen this chart before, but we've just updated it with new stats. So between the website and email work, the social media, the public relations efforts, the paid promotions that we're doing, and publications, altogether the number of impressions, which really is just the number of eyeballs that are seeing our advertising, we're just a little over 9 million impressions. If we were to buy the value of that, it would cost about $1.7 million in advertising equivalents. And of course, we don't like to have to buy all of that. We want to get a lot of that through PR and through good word of mouth and goodwill. So again, we're really happy with the number of impressions that we're able to create and just the excitement that people have. And we seem to also be reaching more new visitors to our destination than we have in years past, which again is very exciting. We want our return guests to always come, but we always want to be having those new folks from Chicago or Dallas or some of these new markets to be discovering us as well. This is the Surfside Beach ATAX overview. I thought it would be helpful for you to see what the trajectory has been. So we start with 2019, which we were clinging to as sort of a best year, especially when we started to deal with the COVID numbers. So you can see totals collected did drop significantly in 2020 from 2019. But then look at that amazing rebound in 2021. Total collected of 894,000, almost 900,000 collected. And again, the increase from 2020 to 2021 was a 34% increase. I guess the best news on this chart is we use an outside firm called Tourism Economics to take a look at all the data and the projections. And right now they are projecting for the 2020 forecast, 2022 forecast, that we will exceed 2021. And again, the total collected will be up another 12% year over year. So again, tourism continues to be very, very strong in the Grand Strand, and that's something I think we can all be very grateful for. This is how we have been spending the 30% that comes to us to spend on marketing. That again is projected for the full 2022 fiscal year to be $293,000. You can see some of that is being invested in creating the ads themselves, but that's just about 5% of what we're investing. And then 7% is invested in destination PR, publicity. 53% of the budget is going to digital advertising. That is everything from web banners on websites and news sites, but that's also a lot of digital video that we're doing now, which is very popular. We've even moved into doing more TikTok. We're still doing Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And so that's been a very, very efficient buy for us that we can track. And then general consumer is a lot of the promotions that we do. And then we do invest 20% of the total budget in good old fashioned television because it still works. People like to see the commercials and it gives them a sense of the place. And so we're able to still place some television very efficiently on people's favorite TV shows, as well as all the streaming sites now that are super, super popular. So Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, we are on all of those kinds of programming as well with our advertising. So this is the Q1 accountability. So this again is showing of that total forecasted in the months of January, February, and March. We did end up spending $21,000, 714, and this is again how it broke out. Diana has the full report that I've just brought her, so you can see the detail of every investment that we made in advertising January through March. And again, a large portion of that was in digital, but also quite a bit in destination publicity. We continue to get a lot of national media around being an accessible and autism-friendly destination. That's still something that is extremely interesting to parents who are looking for family vacations. And this is Q2, so this is for the time frame of April, May, and June. So this is the latest data that we have right now, since Q3 has not closed for us. There we've spent $94,917 in advertising, and once again, digital has been the biggest channel that we have used, with 59% of the budget going there, television 19%, and general consumers promotions 16%. So that detailed packet is there for you if you'd like to go through all of those documents and see those investments in precisely which media companies we made those investments in. So that concludes my report, but I just wanted to give you an update and share some good news with you that things are going well, and we'll continue to work very hard to keep them motoring forward through the fall.
Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. Karen, we met mid last year, I guess it was. I can't remember exactly when it was, earlier this year. Sometime we met. And we ended up with the event down at Neil and Pam's, to get businesses together and so forth.
Before the fire.
Yes, yes. But he'll be back. It's okay. And we worked with Robert, our PIO, to get him set up on getting some updated information to the Visit Surfside Beach page and so forth. is that relationship still developing, and are we
Yes.
getting that collaboration? Is there something more we
I
could be
believe
doing?
we are. I mean, our marketing team knows to reach out to Robert, and we have constant communication. So any new events and festivals, we want to know about them. We're doing more with blogging now too, and more aggressive social media. So I feel like it really, the communication is opened up, and we have a much better sense of what's happening. We still think that there are other events and festivals that could be developed here, for, again, maybe some months and some weeks that don't have anything percolating per se. But that's, I think, the next step for us to sort of sit down and brainstorm together. What are some of the things that the community would like to see? And then, how would those come about? And then it would be our job to help promote them and make sure we get the maximum number of people to come together.
Good news.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very
Thank you.
good.
I think it's
Thank
going
you.
well.
Anybody else? Well, we thank you for coming.
Thank
Yeah,
you very
Thank you
much.
very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We'll close this. Did you shut this off? Yes.
All right, the next thing on the agenda is the finance report by Director King.
Tripping hazard.
And I'm very inclined to do that. Good evening, everybody. This would be the July report for the Finance Department, for the town. July is a very, very boring month. We don't collect a lot of money, but we still pay out lots of bills. A lot of our income that comes in July is really for the month of June, so we put it back to last year. So there really isn't a lot that happens in July. But I will tell you what did happen. In July, there were 29 new business license accounts opened. 6 were new businesses, 4 were new rentals, 10 were new contractors, and 9 were out-of-town businesses, and those are usually, a lot of those are for the market. Special revenue funds, combination hospitality and local aid tax, we didn't collect anything. We only got interest because all of that money that came in July was for June. Capital projects, there weren't any expenditures in July. Stormwater, we're starting a little bit of engineering on the phase 2 of the drainage project. The pier fund, I'll go over in a minute. Sanitation revenue was $172,000 and expenditures were $102,000. Lanier, we took in $108,000 and their expenses were $30,000. Finance department's basically working right now on the audit. The auditors are in. We should be finishing that up in the next couple weeks and we'll be ready to move on to the next year. So right now we're still working in 2021. I wrote some notes, but I will go over at the pier with you for a minute on the next page. Okay, we made payments 2023 to consensus this month. For August, we paid $700,000. The total was $724,000. The net payment was $701,970. So far today, we've paid consensus $10,747,476. Paid out to the pier so far has been $11 million on the pier, $1,007,000 on the building for a total of $12,872,000 plus the interest that we paid. So we paid out $12,983,160 on the pier. There is a loan interest payment due October the 1st for $290,600. That will be our first principal payment on our loan, which is a 15-year loan. The grant from FEMA, they owe us $919,000, but that will be it. Once they pay us that, they are totally paid out, or we are totally paid out. If you go down, some of the other, nothing else has really changed in here. We did have one change order that was added. Go down the middle of the page under pier, CCD number 3, which is the ADA ramp, was $64,682,000, which changed the amount we are going to be paying consensus to $16,176,160. What is left to complete on their contract is $4,113,000. So we still have $4 million to pay to them plus whatever else we're going to do. Altogether, it's probably going to cost us around $18 million for the pier. If you look at the next pages, I wrote you some notes on the bottom, but there's not really a lot going on. But the interesting thing about this month's revenue is $214,000, and half of that came from parking. There really isn't any other revenue that we got in the month of July. Permits, we did get a little bit, and police fines. So the net loss so far, or expenditures exceeding revenue, as they like to say, is $410,000 for the month. Sanitation has a net of 70 because they are holding their own. And in accommodations, we didn't get any of our money in at all. So we just got, our next check should come in October. There's no fees in hospitality and local aid tax. Stormwater fund only received interest and had some expenses. And capital projects fund just got interest too. As I said, July is a slower month for revenue collection in government. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, hopefully an easy one. We know the state has approved an extra $1 million for our pier project. Do we have any clue as to when they might actually issue those funds?
Usually they have to send us an application, and I have not received it yet. I do have an email out to them, but they're still working from home,
Yeah.
a lot of them. So we'll keep on it and see when we can find out when it's coming.
Thanks.
Mhm.
The question I have is, last year we got 1.26 million for the ARG, and we're supposed to get another 1.26 million this year, right? Any idea when we're going to get that?
I believe it comes exactly, it's supposed to be a year from when you got the last one. So I believe it's October, once the fiscal year starts for the feds.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
All right, you're welcome.
Thank you, Diana.
Thanks, Diane.
All right, no problem.
All right, the next thing on the agenda is the Grand Strand Water and Sewer Advisory Board with Jim Wenzel. Good evening.
Good evening. Well, first, let you know, I'm Jim Wenzel. Been here since 1981. Not full-time. I came with the Air Force. Actually worked with Ken's dad at the Air Base. And when he was stationed down here, I came here as a young officer, built a house in Surfside, and I've never been able to cut the cord. I've been down here the last 3 years as a retired guy. So you appointed me to the board to put me to work, and so I guess I got to pay back the last 30 years of not being here. Anyway, I'm your, as you said, you're appointed to the Grand Strand Water and Sewer Board. We meet quarterly. For the first year on my appointment, we didn't meet anything. We couldn't do anything because of COVID. The last 2 years, we finally started up again back last August. We started meeting. So it's quarterly meetings. We got our last one last Tuesday or last Monday. And there's not a lot to update you on. I'll give you a quick overview for those who are really not familiar with Grand Strand Water and Sewer. And then a couple of things that they're trying to push. The GSWSA was created in 1971. It was originally created to handle the unincorporated parts of Horry County. Myrtle Beach pretty much had their own stuff, but they need something to handle the rest of the county. Surfside water at the time was separate. It was provided through wells. Sewer was then added in. In 74, they started doing wastewater when they were hired by, or pretty much tied into DHEC and EPA to start getting grants to take care of the wastewater issues in the county. In 86, the Safe Drinking Water came in, and they started to move towards providing drinking water as well. They built their main plant out in Bucksport, and which came online in 91. And Surfside then signed an agreement in 94 to combine the water and sewer. And that's where we are today. We get sewer and water from Grand Strand Water and Sewer. Surfside, Myrtle Beach is involved too. Myrtle Beach actually gave their treatment plant was rolled into GSWSA. So they have a plant that provides stuff up there, and we have ours. The water primarily comes from the Great PD River system off of Bull Run Creek, which is an arm of it. And they have a large recharge water treatment plant out in Bucksport. It has a capacity that's about 45 million gallons per day. And in the wintertime, that system operates and provides all the water we do. We get our water from the service, and it's put in the distribution system. We have 60 miles of water lines on Surfside, 154 water hydrants that are maintained, and 4,320 water meters. So that kind of gives you an idea of the customers. And in May, as an example, 30.7 million gallons of water were used by Surfside customers, Grand Strand Water and Sewer. There are 2 above-ground storage tanks in town, one at 3rd Avenue North and one at 10th Avenue South. And there's an aquifer storage system injection well at 3rd as well. I'll talk about that in a minute. Since 1993, primary disinfection of water has been done through chloramines. Chloramines, it's basically, it used to be chlorine was the main disinfectant. The problems with chlorine in the water, you get byproducts that are unhealthy. So most systems at one point decided to move toward chloramines, which means you have free chlorine added to water, then you add ammonia, and the ammonia reacts with the chlorine, you create the byproduct, which then becomes your primary disinfectant. There are less byproducts and less danger, or it's a safer system, less odor, less chlorine taste, and as I said, there are fewer unsafe byproducts from using chloramines. The one downside of the chloramine is if you're a fish guy and you have fish tanks, you have to filter for the fish, the chloramine's out because they're not healthy for fish. And if you're on dialysis, you're going to have to use osmosis to get the chloramine out of the water to stay healthy. In the winter, down here, the Bull Creek plant provides all the water we need. And they try to keep the Bull Creek plant running year-round. During the winter, when they're not using excess capacity, it's pumped into an underground aquifer system underneath the Grand Strand, and that water pumps in and pushes out the local water, which for those who've been around here for a long time know there's a natural issue of too high fluoride in the water, in the groundwater. So that water is treated, pushed into the ground, it forces the local groundwater out and keeps a clean bubble underneath the Grand Strand, which is basically free storage. You don't have to do above ground storage tanks, you use the underground to store it. So it's a lot cheaper to do it that way. In the winter, in the summertime, we go reverse process. 75% of the water comes from Bull Creek, 25% is pulled back from the injection well, or from the underground aquifer. And it helps do 2 things. It allows Bull Creek, again, to keep running normally at its optimum. It takes care of the summer bump that we have for water usage. And because it's cooler, and there are times that we have pipes that are pretty close to the surface, and when we're pulling water from Bull Creek during the summertime, it's pretty warm. You can mix it with the underground aquifer water and bring the temperature down in your pipes. I'm sure everybody's had a case in here when it's really hot, your water gets hot. Your cold water is hot, it even seems, so. But it's not dangerous, it's just doesn't taste as good. So it's one way to bring that temperature down is to mix it. And they have the capability to mix more of the underground aquifer water into the Bull Creek water in order to bring the temperature down if they need to. But pretty much right now it's a 75-25 setup. The above ground storage tanks that we have, like I said, one in the north, one in the south, those are drawn down daily and then refilled, usually used in the morning. That's when your peak time is. People taking showers, ready for work, starting their day. You bring it down, keeps the pressure up, fill them back up in the evening, and it allows us to keep the pressure up, and it allows for replenishing and refreshing the water, so the water doesn't get stagnant in the tank. Sewer, the wastewater treatment is out in the Burgess area. It's the J.L. Swartz South Strand Regional Water Treatment Wastewater Treatment Plant. And effluent coming out of that plant goes down and is discharged north of Georgetown into the Waccamaw system. And it is discharged downstream from the Georgetown water system intake, so it's not like they're getting our sewage water down in their system. That isn't it. But it's a fairly clean and fairly regulated system. The Schwartz plant takes care of Surfside, Garden City, Socastee, the old air base, and then the old Waccamaw Potter area to include coastal Carolina and Carolina Forest. So it's pretty catchment area. There's the sewage is through local gravity lines. We have 30 miles of gravity lines in the city, And then there are 9 miles of force main. So basically, you have gravity running to pump stations, which we have, we have 4 pump stations. Pump stations then put it into a force main, which takes it to the plant. There are 11 grinders at these pump stations to take care of bulk stuff that goes down the drain that you don't really want from the toilet or sewer, and grind things up and keep things flowing smoothly. But one of the things we're going to talk about in a minute is one of the bugaboos in the system is wet wipes that go down in the system. We're going to talk about that. So periodically, the support we get from Grand Strand Water and Sewers, periodically they will flush the water mains every other year. And when that happens, you're going to get sediment, you're going to get discoloration coming from your pipes. You might have a little bit older. They usually switch to free chlorine at that time because it's better to disinfect the pipes as they do it than the chlorine. But it'll burn off over a couple days and then be back to the chlorine and everything will be good. Occasionally they do smoke testing of gravity water system. You've seen the letters come out on that. That's to check and make sure that there's no broken pipes, that there's no stormwater getting into the system, which could overload the plant. It's also another way to make sure we have nobody that's sneaking on and connecting into the system who shouldn't connect. They have twice a year reminders that don't put fats, oils, and grease down the drain. I don't know if you've ever heard about these. You see these things like in London occasionally. They have these water. They have to send guys down the sewer system in London with hacksaws and everything they can do to get rid of grease balls that form in the system and that block up the drains. And that's the kind of thing they're trying to do with the grinders. And they don't want to get that stuff in there. And the other thing they do is the next bill, you're going to see a flyer included with the wipes, clogs, pipes message. And you've all seen the thing from the wet wipes from the manufacturers. They say these things are biodegradable, and they're not. They may be over 50 years to 100 years, but they don't stay in the water system that long, the wastewater system that long. Then the grinders have trouble grinding them up. So they don't want the wet wipes to go down the drain. You'll see it in your bill. Pass that along as much as we can. We want to try to get these things out of the system as much as possible. It's a well-run system, well-established, been around for 50 years. Our our average water bills in the system are $50 a water and sewer, $50 a month. That doesn't include the $18.75 we do in the Surfside for the sanitation carts. But at $50, we have quite a deal because you get out in Charleston, it's $120 for the same amount of water down in Charleston. We are the lowest in the local area, and we're lowest along the coast in bill. So, I mean, Grand Strand, like anything, they're a big entity. They're going to have their spot problems, but it's a very, very well run, very well set up system. They do maintain a robust 24-hour-a-day system, and if you have water problem, the problems they talk about, if there's color problem, a taste problem, odor, low pressure, or no water at all, call them. The other thing is for sewers, if there's backup spills, odors or leaking lines, again, call them first. They may find it may be their problem. If not, they will help you kind of get it set up in the right direction. And then if you have to end up calling that plumber guy, you will. But you might save yourself some money by calling Grand Strand Water and Sewer first. So, pretty good system, and thank you for the appointment. Go ahead.
That was quite an education. I learned a whole lot about Grand Strand Water tonight, and I appreciate it.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, just one quick question. When you talk about wet wipes, does that, and I've heard this before, but that includes the ones that are marketed as flushable?
Yes,
wipes,
they are not
correct?
flushable. No
Correct.
matter what they say they're flushable.
I didn't think so.
I'm the Grand Dad the first time too, so I mean our house is, we don't, big bucket right there. Don't do it. And we do with our kids for years. We told them, for years, don't put those things down because they will clog. If they end up clogging your line, they're going to collect in the pump station.
Mm-hmm.
Pump stations have 2 pumps. They'll have a second pump in every one so if one goes off, they can switch to the second pump, and they have 11 grinders in those 4 pumps to try and grind things up. But they have very difficult time grinding up the wet wipes. They just don't work well in the system. So, any other questions from anybody?
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead.
I'd like to thank you too for coming out. Very educational today to hear your aspect, and thank you for your service. Really appreciate it.
I'm a wastewater guy from a long time, so.
Well,
And thank you for your
thank you very
service to the
much.
town.
Good.
Okay, well, the next thing on the agenda is the business. And that's ordinance 22-0946, chapter 12, streets, sidewalks, beaches, and other public places.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, for just a moment. I know there was some question, as we said at the beginning of the meeting, about this matter being on the agenda again. And I just want to let everybody know, because we talked a lot about reconsideration and so forth. Robert's Rules, Article 6, Section 38, talks about renewals of a motion. And it says specifically, when an original main motion or an amendment has been adopted or rejected, or a main motion has been postponed indefinitely, or an objection to its consideration has been sustained, it or practically the same motion cannot be brought again at the same session. Which this is not the same session. As I am looking at your agenda, and I was not your town attorney at the time, it looks like this was originally brought in March of 2022. And I believe, Sherry, correct me if I'm wrong, it did not pass at that time?
Correct.
Okay, all right. So this is not the same session. This is 5 months later, except by a motion to reconsider or to rescind the vote. That would be at the same meeting or during the same session. But it may be introduced again at any future session. That is why I stated at the beginning of the meeting that renewal would be proper. You are renewing this matter again. There's a lot of language in between that talks about a bunch of different things that does not have to do with the matter you have on the agenda. But at the end, as I stated, that you cannot defeat the democratic process. It said it is the duty of the chair to prevent the privilege of renewal from being used to obstruct the business of the body. And when it is evident that it is being used or misused, the chair should protect the assembly by refusing to recognize a motion as a dilatory motion. Just want to make sure we were clear on that there is a renewal that is allowed by Robert's Rules in Article 6, Section 38. And my interpretation of that rule is that this is what this is because it has been 5 months later. It's not the same session, so therefore you cannot reconsider, rescind, or amend because you're out of that window, but renewal would be proper. However, if it is obstructing the business and continues to be a dilatory matter for your council, then you have the right to strike down any motion to proceed with considering it again.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to accept ordinance number 22-0946, making the current revisions dated today's date for first reading, with a couple amendments that I think would be prudent when we talk about issuing the encroachment permits for the 3 feet to the edge of the right-of-way would be to reference not impeding that such plantings or landscaping would not be impeding sight lines, and that we also reference the best interest of the town in accordance with our stormwater ordinance of Chapter 14.
Second.
Okay, well, let's have a discussion on that. Mr. Stamey.
I'd like to make a statement that's saying I'm tired of beating this horse to death. I thought we had done this one time or twice before this. And I think there's some people on this council, and I ain't calling no names, that wants to beat this horse to death. They keep bringing it up. And it's to a matter of where it's getting a little old. We're getting the same thing just about every time that we do this. So I think the public ought to realize what it really is happening. Thanks.
All right, Mr. Holder.
Well, we've got 2 different write-ups tonight. We have the write-up that was sent to us in our package, and a write-up that was given to us before we came in tonight. That is the one that I believe Bill provided to Sherry. I think we need to talk about both write-ups, what's the differences, and what we're going to do.
Okay, Ms. Keating.
Yeah, again, like I said, the predominant changes of the chapter that we have worked on since September of 2020 updates some of the terminology, streamlines and maintains consistent usage of defined terms. We've added a significant chapter for handling special events, third-party sponsored events, other events that utilize our public property to ensure that everybody is treated fairly and consistently, which has not always been the practice. We've also modified some of the restrictions on food trucks within the town. So there's a lot more here than just the right-of-ways. Like I said, right now our ordinance has become unenforceable as it exists, and it behooves this body to provide our code with something that is reasonable and enforceable. So with the recommendation that we have a clear zone of the first 3 feet, and then we allow the landscaping and planting for the balance of the right of way, is a reasonable compromise between having something that has been consistently violated to just ignoring it for the sake of ignoring it. Like I said earlier, it's been determined by our public works that moving from a 10 feet clear zone to a 5-foot clear zone eliminates about 75% of the infringing properties. Moving from a 5-foot clear zone to a 3-foot clear zone would reduce that even further. So I think, and the reason I want to add the other 2 references is to some of the points that were raised tonight, is, we are not going to, want to be taking out trees, because that's part of our stormwater project. The trees that are planted by the town or the trees that have been there for 100 years, clearly, whether they're in the right of way or in your front yard, you can't take them out any more than we want to take them out. So, to think that the town's now going to come through and clear cut all the right of ways, that's just ridiculous. So we're not going to do that. That they're critical components to our stormwater projects. And the idea of, maybe the 18 inches and less landscaping for our wider right of ways, some of the right of ways in towns might be 50 feet. That might be a little over restrictive. So if we consider it's an 18-inch height difference or height limit based on line of sight issues for the vehicle transportation throughout the town. We all know there's corners in this town that you pull up to the stop sign and there's something growing in the right of way. You can't see beyond it. Those are the situations we need to correct with or without this ordinance change. Those things need to be corrected. But I think with this, it's a good compromise. It allows most of the properties currently infringing this ordinance to become compliant while maintaining the multiple purposes of our right-of-ways.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cracklaw.
Well, I would like to speak on what Larry McKean brought up as far as the trees. Like Ms. Keating said, if it's a Bradford pear, take it out. They're no good. But if it's a live oak or another protected tree that we want, it needs to be left there. And I don't see why the town would want to, nor will, I don't believe we will, take out trees that aren't any real issue, especially if they're established. As far as the 3 foot goes, I don't think it's enough, but I go along with it because we need an enforceable ordinance that we can work with, or the Public Works and the police department can work with. So I am for this, I guess. And I guess that's about all I have to say on it right now. I think we probably will revisit some of it at some point in time, maybe make it larger or tweak it a little bit, but we need to move on.
Mr. Kinkin.
I've already given out everybody an amendment to this because This does not protect the homeowner from having cars parked in their yard. And maybe they don't care, but if I paid money to have sod put out and pay somebody to mow it every week, the last thing I want is a 4,000-pound car driving through my yard and it's muddy. The 3-foot clear zone, the whole purpose of that was to allow people to step off the side of the curb if traffic's coming, or in a couple of cases I've had to this year is pull over to get around construction equipment that's parked in the middle of the street. Shouldn't have to do that, but I've had to. And it didn't damage. I don't want anything in that 3 foot that'll tear your car up. I've got a neighbor that's got boulders this size, less than 2 feet from the road. And if you go around that corner and you hit that, it's going to tear the whole side of your car out. So my idea was a clear zone with stuff like that, not the 18-inch flower or the flowers, they're 18-inch shrubs, which you could still step over if you have to. Like I say, I'm going to make an amendment to this because I just think this is still too restrictive, and I have to say I don't understand why they want to enforce something that we haven't enforced for years and just make any hardship on the citizens. We tell them they have to maintain it, and they should have a lot of rights of what they can put in their yard they're maintaining. There's not anybody in this town that doesn't understand that if there's a active project that requires that to be cleared, they have to clear it. We all have driveways that have a encroachment permit, and I know that if they're going to run a sewer through there and I have to tear up my bricks, I have to tear up my bricks. I don't think there's any question that it belongs to the city to use when they have an active project. But who knows when that'll be? So as it's written, I'm against it. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Drake.
I personally think that if we're going to have an ordinance in place, it needs to be something that's enforceable. It needs to be something that Public Works can work with. And the street corners in Surfside are very dangerous, a lot of them. You pull up stop signs, you can't see right or left. I talked to Kenny about this. The white line in the road, you're supposed to stop behind it, not in front of it. If you roll past the white line, you roll past and you step up there, then you ran a stop sign. I know a lot of people got some tickets last year about that. I don't know how many he had to pay. I don't know if he waived them or whatever, but they got stopped. It's time that we get something that's enforceable. Public Works can do it. Kenny's right along. If he sees something in the way that's a public safety, he can report it to John Adair. They can get it taken care of. Homeowners, a lot of them got beautiful stuff out there. If it's below the 18 inches, it's fine. But it's not your property to say you can't park there, you can't do this and run people off, but yet you're going to say it's for guests only. That's not right. So just move on with it then. Go ahead, Bill.
Okay, as we've been over this many, many times, everybody has disagreements on what it should be. But it's our job as council to make it to what it needs to be so that it is effective and enforceable. So, we've listened to everybody. We've taken everybody's consideration into it, but nobody can agree on it. So that's why it's here for a vote.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to offer an amendment to Chapter 12, specifically to Chapter 12-21. Section A, no change. Section B, the clear zone defined as the first 3 feet from the roadway where it may exist may allow flowers and low shrubs of 18 inches or less with an encroachment permit that is allowed for driveways, pathways, and other below grade so as not to interfere with the clear zone right of way. The purpose of the clear zone is to allow pedestrians to step off the road for oncoming traffic or for drivers to pull over to avoid obstacles in the road. Public purposes that can be in the clear zone include but not limited to city trees, sidewalks, drainage facilities, local, state, and federal signage, utility poles, legal public parking, mailboxes, and street furniture such as trash cans. Section C, no change. Section D, encroachment permits may be granted as outlined in Section B above where the right-of-way exceeds 3 feet from the edge of the roadway. The residents may follow the town's lead and install raised planters, trees, shrubs, and other devices to prevent parking in their yard. We require property owners in Chapter 7 to maintain their property, and the town should allow the owner to protect their property if they so choose. The line of sight must be protected, and nothing can be installed as an obstruction in a drainage right-of-way. When the town has an active project to use beyond the clear zone, the owner must remove any restrictions. That's the end of it. As far as the line of sight, whether we pass this or not, that should have been enforced all along.
Okay, so that is
That is my
amendment.
motion.
I second
Okay, so should we have discussion on the amendment before we vote on the original?
Yes, sir.
All right, Mr. Stamey.
I pass.
Mr. Holder?
No.
No, this isn't a vote. This is discussion.
Oh, okay, no. I thought you were voting. No, I agree with what Bill suggested, and I think I would agree to vote for that with those changes.
Okay. Ms. Keating?
I mean, I agree with some of what was read there, and I think it can be incorporated into what we have. I don't agree that there should be any plantings of any kind in a 3-foot clear zone. It kind of defeats the purpose of being a clear zone. I've walked everywhere in this town, and if I'm caught between oncoming and parallel traffic, I'm not going to step off and walk through somebody's flower bed. I may have to step off and stand there, but that's an entirely different purpose than to be able to step off. Again, there are emergency situations. There's urgent situations that may not be under an emergency. You get a flat tire, you have to swerve to miss a bike, or whatever. At least with a 3-foot clear zone, that leaves you an opportunity of a little bit of place to go. So that part of that amendment I wouldn't agree with. But as I said in the original, I think a reference to line of sight and a reference to the importance of maintaining our tree canopy under the stormwater program and our flood prevention ordinance and our tree preservation ordinance, I think is worth a reference in this section as well.
And I don't have any more to add, I guess, except for it seems like we're almost back where we were before. We've had, I don't know how many different tries to have this written so that people could agree on it, and it just keeps not passing. It needs to at some point pass, and if it passes in a way that people are not happy with, I'm sure they'll all let us know, and we can maybe revisit it. But it's time to get an enforceable ordinance in hand. That's my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, this was written to affect the fewest number of people possible, and yet to remove any obstruction in that first 3 foot that would tear your car up. Now, whether it's these boulders, there's half the size of this table, or sharp rocks, or fence, if that's in the 3 foot, it needs to be moved back. Because if you go over 3 feet off the road, you've already wrecked, you just don't know it. There's no reason to pull up in somebody's yard other than to park. And I think people, especially in the R3, that want to prevent parking in their yard should have that opportunity. Back on Cedar Drive, it's not a big problem, except maybe around downtown when they have something going on. It is a real problem in R3. And people paid money to have those yards maintained. And then they turn around as some visitor or day tripper decides they want to park there instead of paying to park. And if you drive around the R3 now, you'll see it everywhere. People should have the right to protect their property. We require them to maintain it, and we should give them the right to protect it. And that's all this does. It gives them 3 feet that they can have low shrubs, flowers if they want to, with the understanding somebody may drive through it. But beyond that 3 feet, they ought to be able to prevent people from parking in the yard. And that 3 foot I picked was because you can't legally park a golf cart or a car in a 3 foot section. It just won't happen. And that's why I wrote it. This is the second time I've brought it up. This is the third time we've talked about the same thing, well, maybe fourth time. So that's it. That's why I did it.
Okay, Mr. Drake,
I'm fine.
you got nothing?
No. It's got to get on with it.
Well, here we are, and we're down to the thing. We got a vote. We're going to be taking 2 votes, one on the original, one on the amendment. And the amendment says they like some of the stuff that's in the front, and the original thing said that they sort of like some of the stuff he said, but not everything. So my question to you, Ms. Keating, is do you want to change at all your original that you did, or do you want to keep it the same way that it is?
No, my original motion would stand as is.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, you will need to take the vote on this amendment first and see if it passes to change her original main motion.
Okay. So on the amendment, do you want to read one more time what the amendment is so that everybody understands it?
Okay. Everybody should have a copy of it. This is to amend chapter 12, section 21. In section A, there's no change. Section B, the clear zone defined as the first 3 feet from the roadway where it may exist, may allow for flowers and low shrubs 18 inches or less, with an encroachment permit that is allowed for driveways, pathways, and other below grade so as not to interfere with the clear zone right of way. The purpose of the clear zone is to allow pedestrians to step off the road for oncoming traffic or for drivers to pull over to avoid obstacles in the road. Public purposes that can be in the clear zone but are not limited to the city trees, sidewalks, drainage facilities, local, state, and federal signage, utility poles, legal public parking, mailboxes, and street furniture such as public trash cans. Section C, no change. Section D, encroachment permits may be granted as outlined in Section B above where the right-of-way exceeds 3 feet from the edge of the roadway. The residents may follow the town's lead and install raised planters, trees, shrubs, and other devices to prevent parking in their yard. We require property owners in Chapter 7 to maintain their property, and the town should allow the owner to protect their property if they so choose. This line of sight must be protected, and nothing can be installed as an obstruction in a drainage right-of-way. When the town has an active project to use beyond the clear zone, the owner must remove any restrictions.
Okay, and with that, Mr. Stamey,
Yes.
Holder,
Yes.
Keating,
No.
Crocklaw,
No.
Drake,
Oh, you forgot Mr. Kinkin.
Oh.
I want to vote yes.
All right. Thank you. I'm sorry about that. Mr. Drake?
No.
And I'm going to vote no on that too. So that did fail. Now let's go back to the original one. Ms. Keating, do you want to read that to us again? Because you added a couple of things about not impeding sight lines.
Yeah, the motion was to accept ordinance 22-0946 for the current modifications to chapter 12 with the addition of reference to our tree ordinance, our stormwater ordinance and program, and also quantify the 18 inches for impacting line of sight.
Okay. Mr. Stamey?
No.
Holder?
No.
Keating?
Yes.
Yes.
Kinkin?
No.
Drake?
Yes.
And I'm going to vote yes on that too. So that did pass. All right, next one is the resolution 220153, the resolution of the town of Surfside Beach to temporarily suspend enforcement of section 8-93. Robert, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. How are you? So as this resolution states and the decision paper states, you've already passed and allowed Celebrate Surfside Beach to hold an event on September 24th. One of the things they are looking to do is hold a raffle for a nonprofit during that event. I just was not included in the last time I came to ask you for approval for that event. You have section 8-93, which prohibits games of chance, which raffles would be included in that. So this is just a request to allow them to again hold this raffle in conjunction with a nonprofit.
All right.
Okay, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Robert, just a clarification.
Yes, ma'am.
We all know the state of South Carolina highly regulates games of chance, lotteries,
Yes, ma'am.
gambling
Yes,
in
ma'am.
general.
Yes, ma'am.
And if it's held at a place that also has a liquor license, SLED gets involved. If not, then the Secretary of State gets involved. But what Celebrate Surfside wants to do is well within the bounds of state law that the Secretary of State would approve this raffle being conducted to benefit South Strand Helping Hands. Is that correct?
I have met with the organizers of Celebrate Surfside Beach and spoke with the Secretary of State's office. There are some exemptions, and there are, like you said, it's highly regulated. What Celebrate Surfside Beach has chosen to do, which falls within the exempt rules for the Secretary of State's office as far as their Charitable Raffles Act goes, is to hold a raffle that would be include prizes that are donated non-cash and a total value of less than equal to or less than $950. So that would fall into their non-exempt category, which means that they would not have to submit a form, they would not have to apply to the state to do this. And again, I cleared that with someone at the Secretary of State. So the Celebrate Surfside committee, and as my understanding through them, the nonprofit has agreed to follow that rule and hold it in that manner.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I've got a question for Robert.
Yes,
If we do this, if we do one, does that not just open up a can of worms for everybody else to apply for one of these raffles or for everything we have in town now? If we do one, do you not think there are going to be some more all of a sudden say, well, we're going to have a raffle? Then it's going to come to town council to approve this for them now?
That might be a result where others might, want to hold raffles. That would be, obviously, there is an ordinance that says they can't, at least currently.
Well, that's what we're looking at now is we got an ordinance that says they can't. But if we do one, then you're saying, come on, somebody else put in for one. So we're going to have to come back and vote on it again for somebody else. And if we pass it for them, then all of a sudden we're going to be passing it for somebody else.
That is
Mr.
for
Mayor.
y'all to consider.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I think what Robert's trying to do and what Keep Surfside Beautiful is doing for Helping Hands is a very good aspect of community involvement. And if we're the family beach, that's what we should be doing. If somebody puts in one that wants to do something different and Robert checks on it through the state and it doesn't meet the requirements, then he would come back and say, no, it didn't meet the requirements. He could tell them that. But we don't need to micromanage. Simple as this is for helping hands and for doing what's right. So I think everything you have to take it one at a time. You can't have a wide brush and brush it all and says, no, you just can't do that. So.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
you're saying not to take a wide brush, but once you open this up, Michael, this is going to be, it turns into a gambling thing then.
No.
You know, yes, it will. You just wait and see what I'm telling you. There'll be other people applying for this for other things than just a raffle. And if we've already got on our books here in town saying that we can't do this, so that's what we ought to stick by, is what we got on the books. We ought to stick by what we put out to start with.
Okay, is there anybody else that has any comments before we vote on this? All right, I'm going to read it so that everybody knows what it is before we vote. Resolution of the Town of Surfside Beach to temporarily suspend enforcement of Section 8-93, Gambling and Games of Chance. Whereas the Town of Surfside, whereas the Town Council has given its blessing to the event organizers to host the second annual Celebrate Surfside event, and whereas proposed event will take place on September 24th at 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., and whereas organizers of the South Strand Helping Hand desire to hold a raffle to help raise money for the nonprofit, and whereas state regulations deem raffles involving non-cash prizes totaling more than $950 exempt from certain state requirements, and whereas Surfside Beach Code of Ordinances Section 8-93 prohibits gambling and games of chance, and whereas raffles are currently considered games of chance, and now therefore Town Council desires to temporarily suspend enforcement of Section 8-93 of its Code of Ordinance, Gambling and Games of Chance, on September 24th for the second annual Celebrate Surfside event. Okay, Mr. Stamey, how do you vote?
No.
Mr. Mayor, I don't believe we have a motion
Have to make a motion.
for this yet. So, Mr.
Mr.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to accept resolution number 22-0153 to temporarily suspend enforcement of section 8.93 to facilitate the Celebrate Surfside event on September 24th.
Second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. All right, Mr. Stamey.
No.
Holder.
No.
Keating.
Yes.
Crutchlow.
Yes.
Kinkin.
Yes.
Drake.
Yes.
And I'm a yes too, so
Thank you.
that resolution will be suspended for the Helping Hands in their raffle.
Thank you, Robert.
And the next thing on here is the appointment to the Business Committee.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, as you know, we have several openings on the Business Committee. The committee has come together and identified 4 different goals of some of the inter-business relationship building and services that they would like to address. But we have a committee of 9 people, and we've lost 3 of those members. So this week we received an application that I would like to make a motion to appoint Tom Banish, and I apologize if I'm pronouncing that wrong, to the Business Committee. Tom comes to us with extensive commercial business experience and also has a extensive municipal service experience as well that I think would greatly benefit the Business Committee.
Do I have a second on that?
Second.
All right, is there any discussion before we vote on it?
I meant to look this up, Mr. Mayor. I meant to look this up. Is residency requirement to being on the Business Committee?
No, sir, it is
Okay,
not.
good. 'Cause I talked to Tom the other day on the phone and I was impressed with him. I'm glad that's not a holdup.
Yeah, the business experience is a requirement, not residency.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And I also know him, and works in Connecticut. He's done a lot of good work. His wife ran a Chamber of Commerce in Connecticut. So he has a great experience.
Okay. Any other comments before we vote? Mr. Stamey,
Yes.
Holder,
Yes.
Keating,
Yes.
Crecklaw,
Yes.
Kinkin,
Yes.
Drake,
Yes.
and myself is yes. So that is it for that. The next thing, or the last thing, is public comments, and these are public comments in reference to town services and business conducted.
Larry McKean, 6th Avenue South, just in reference to 1221. I don't know what you voted on, but it sounded much better. If you could publish that before the morning of the next meeting, it would be appreciated, so I can look at the wording and make sure what you've written is clear and logical. So that's all I ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Yes, sir.
Richard Live, 14th Avenue North. It's always a bad thing to start a comment with a quote or a paraphrase, but I'd like to start with a paraphrase of Shakespeare, something rotten in Surfside Beach. That being said, when you look at this in totality, it seems strange that a body of elected officials would go out of their way to make criminals out of 400 property owners. That may be an exaggeration, but that's sort of where this started. Now, there's two ways to look at this that I see. One, being generous, is that I understand that the town council wants to have an ordinance that's enforceable. That makes a lot of sense. To be somewhat cynical, it would seem that there might be a hidden agenda here. That being said, I would like to offer a positive kudo to the members of council that have taken this from 10 feet to 15 feet to 30 feet down to a reasonable amount of 5 or 3 feet to take care of the issues at hand. So I understand it's not as nice as maybe Bill would have liked, but it's better than it was 2 years ago. So with that, I'd like to commend the council for coming up with some sort of a reasonable compromise as far as I can see, as far as I can understand. So with that, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other public comments? Good evening, sir.
Good evening. My name is Tom Banish. You just appointed me to the Business Committee. Just wanted to say thank you very much. I appreciate your support, and I look forward to working for the betterment of Surfside Beach.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, if that's all the public comments, then we'll go into the comments from town council. So we'll start out with you, Mr. Stamey.
Thanks for everybody coming out and the people listening. This was the first vote on this chapter 12. That's our first reading of it. So there's going to be another reading, and I suggest the public really look into what this says and make your voices heard, because there will be a second reading before this is passed, brought into law. And you better, all your homeowners and property owners, better pay attention to what it says. With that being said, everybody have a good night.
Mr. Holder.
Yes, I'd like to thank everybody that came out tonight. And it was great to hear the Chamber of Commerce and how things are looking for us. It was a great positive report. And it's great to see still when you write down the homes are full down on the rental areas. We had a meeting yesterday that went over a couple things about parking and also about us having a new town hall or having a new council for this place. We've got to do something in the future. And I think it's time now that we have a vote about the location. So I think we need to get that vote for next time. Thank you.
Ms. Keating.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody for coming out and providing their feedback and their input to these things. You can never do anything that makes everybody happy. But what we can do is make sure that we maintain our code of ordinances with a level of reasonableness and legalities. One of the initiatives that we have had over the past couple years is to go through our code of ordinances chapter by chapter and correct some of the past sins, correct some of the inconsistencies, some of the conflicts that have been created over decades of band-aiding, fixing one problem by creating 5 other kind of things that are still in these ordinances today. We ran across one that we updated several months ago that referenced the City of Myrtle Beach codes that we should comply with in the town of Surfside. Clearly, that was an oversight from long ago that we were able to correct. This provision for the right-of-way is no different. This has been there for decades. And for whatever reason, over the years, people have been allowed to violate it. And, whether they paid fines to do so or didn't, they never were brought back into compliance. So one of, when we started looking at this chapter for the purposes of, the sidewalk cafe permitting and, the events and some of the other inconsistencies grammar-wise and so forth, we said, well, this is our opportunity to create an ordinance that allows all those past violations to exist. We're trying to find that place where all of those properties are no longer in violation. They are now compliant with the ordinance. So I think we've made finally, took us about a year, but we have finally made some headway into providing that for our town and for our homeowners. So I think we made a very good step forward tonight, and I look forward to the second reading and finalizing the additional language. So with that, as always, I appreciate everybody's feedback and reaching out on Facebook and other text messages that I receive with questions and concerns. Usually I forward them on to the appropriate staff member, or I try to find the answer for you. So keep those coming. I appreciate that. So as always, stay safe, stay healthy. We'll see you in another couple weeks. Thank you.
Mr. Cracklaw.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for coming out and those listening. I'd like to thank Tom Banish for joining the ranks of the non-paid people that help keep this town running. We appreciate all of our committee members, and that's what we need, is people to take an interest and help shape the future of the town. And with that, good night.
Mr. Kankin.
Good evening. I want to thank everyone for coming out and listening in tonight. We live in a great town. Special thanks to our staff, our public works, public safety teams who do such a wonderful job for our town. Let's hear from you, as concerned citizens, because we're not an HOA. At this point, I'm going to vent. We have a peer committee made up of really talented individuals who are attempting to find vendors that will help pay for our pier. Our staff has not been very forthcoming with suggestions on how to accomplish some of the things that they want to try. They're trying to arrange for the town. Most regulations that say no, most regulations that may say no have a potential loophole. At the meeting last week, there were numerous examples of why we cannot have power underneath the pier. It should have been a positive list of what needs to be done to have power under the pier. And I was very disappointed in what went on. For too long, potential vendors and residents are told no to their requests when we should be looking at what could be done to accomplish using our ordinance as base guide. Sometimes there may be a solution that will help, that will meet the needs. And sometimes the answer is still no, but we need to be more positive. I just feel like that we just don't spend enough time trying to help individuals and businesses that come in this town. And it's not just started, it's been going on for years. I think we've all, or a lot of us have experienced it. So with that said, have a good night and see you in 2 weeks, or I guess it's longer than 2 weeks. Thank you for coming. Bye.
Mr. Drake.
I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in tonight and coming out and meeting with us, and we got a good crowd. Back to chapter 12. Again, we want something that's enforceable. We want something that's fair to everyone, not just 200 people versus 3,800 plus residents. So if you see somebody plant something or do something up by the road and it's not in the ordinance, then I guess if we don't have the ordinance or we're not going to enforce it, I guess you can go do it too. Maybe you want to put a cyclone fence up right at the edge of the road. I don't know. Maybe that'd be okay. But I think we got the ordinance set up now that is pretty much down the middle for everybody. It's something that can be enforced. And I'm glad that we got it done. It wasn't an easy decision, but that's something we got to do. And thank you very much.
Okay, like, you know, this part about the right of way, we've been working on it and working on it and working on it. And we've got some people that are happy about it, some people that aren't happy about it. But, you know, the job of council is to represent all of the residents in the town and make sure that what we do is beneficial of all and not of any individual. So, I mean, that's what we're trying to do, and we're trying to make it so that everything is equitable in what we do. I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I want to thank our town attorney for being here. She helped us greatly this evening. So y'all have a nice evening, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All those in favor? This meeting is adjourned.